the inherited silence of Blackwood Hollow, a consuming void. When Great-Aunt Beatrice passed away, she left me her remote farmhouse in a place simply known as Blackwood Hollow. At 25, completely burnt out from the relentless noise and pressure of city life, I saw it as a desperate chance for peace, a much-needed digital detox from a world that had frayed my last nerve. The drive itself was long and isolating. The winding country roads grew narrower, the trees denser, until my phone's signal finally blinked out, leaving me utterly disconnected. The farmhouse itself, when it finally appeared through the encroaching twilight, was ancient and imposing, its shadowed windows like watching, unblinking eyes. My first impression upon stepping inside was the profound, almost overwhelming silence. This wasn't just the quiet stillness of the countryside. It was an active, echoing stillness. I strained my ears, listening intently, but there was no distant bird call, no rustle of leaves, no hum of traffic, nothing but the insistent, strangely loud thud of my own heartbeat in the vacuum. It was unsettling, to be sure, but I initially dismissed it as merely the result of extreme remoteness, convincing myself the dense forest provided some unusual kind of natural soundproofing. The first week passed in a deceptive calm. I spent my days exploring the sprawling, dusty house, its many forgotten rooms, and the vast, overgrown woods that surrounded it. The silence was my constant companion, a thick, heavy blanket draped over everything, and I slowly found myself adapting to its oppressive presence. But then, the nature of the silence began to shift. It felt less like an absence of sound and more like a palpable presence, an active, consuming force that radiated from the very core of Blackwood Hollow. It started subtly, an insidious invasion. My own voice, when I tried to speak, would just dissipate into the air, swallowed whole without an echo, leaving only a faint, dull resonance in my throat. If I dropped a heavy book, the thud was strangely muted, distant, as if I were underwater. My footsteps on the old, complaining floorboards, which should have groaned loudly, were dull, almost imperceptible. It genuinely felt like the air itself was growing thick, viscous, actively dampening all vibration, resisting the propagation of sound. The silence grew aggressive, becoming a physical burden. I'd wake in the mornings, and the quiet was so intense it was deafening, accompanied by a high-pitched whine that morphed into a constant, dull, throbbing pressure behind my eyes. I'd clap my hands, and the sound felt wrong, like striking something soft and yielding, the physical impact without the expected auditory feedback. Desperate for any normal noise, I'd try playing music on my phone, turning the volume to maximum, but the melodies sounded thin, tinny, sucked dry of their vibrancy, as if the silence was actively draining their energy, leaving only hollow husks of notes. It felt like the absence was becoming sentient, listening, learning, waiting. My perception began to warp in other, more terrifying ways. Colors in the house seemed to dim, especially in the deeper shadows, as if the light itself was being leached away. Shadows would deepen unnaturally, appearing to pulse or shift at the periphery of my vision. Objects would subtly shift their positions when I wasn't directly looking at them, or flicker out of existence for a split second before snapping back. I'd swear I left a teacup on the table, only to find it neatly placed on the windowsill moments later, as if by an unseen, tidy hand. The house, I realized with growing dread, was changing around me, guided by this profound stillness. I tried to leave, to walk out of Blackwood Hollow, but the forest itself seemed to conspire against me, its dense, twisting paths always leading me back to the looming farmhouse, a silent, inescapable sentinel. At night, the dread solidified into pure terror. The silence in the house became suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides, a physical weight on my chest. I started hearing faint, impossible noises, a dry rustle of paper from an empty study, a soft, almost imperceptible dragging sound from downstairs, the undeniable creak of attic floorboards directly above my bedroom. These weren't loud sounds, but in that profound quiet, they were amplified, each one a tiny, terrifying puncture in the oppressive void that felt like it was actively listening back, a vast, hungry ear. Desperate for answers, a logical explanation for the unraveling of my reality, I finally forced myself into Great-Aunt Beatrice's private study. Tucked away in a hidden compartment behind a loose brick in the fireplace, camouflaged by decades of soot, I found her personal diaries. Her delicate, spidery handwriting deteriorated over the decades, becoming increasingly frantic, then utterly terrified. She wrote of the quiet, how it had initially been a peaceful balm, a solace she sought but had transformed into a consuming hum, a hungry void. She described it systematically stealing sounds, light, and even physical objects. She called it the silent keeper, an entity born of fundamental absence, a being of pure negation. Her later entries detailed how it had pushed visitors away from the house, protecting its quiet domain. The chilling final entry, dated just days before her death, was scrawled so forcefully it tore the brittle page. "It knows my name now. It wants the last sound, my breath. It wants to take me whole. It chose you. You are next, Beatrice's child. You are the resonance it desires." The horrifying truth struck me like a physical blow, colder than any chill in the house. Beatrice hadn't just died peacefully. The silent keeper had consumed her, absorbing her life force, leaving only a hollow shell. And now it was methodically hunting me, systematically erasing my reality, piece by agonizing piece, preparing me for absorption. It wasn't just feeding on sound. It fed on presence, on consciousness, on reality itself, stripping away everything that defined me until only a resonance remained for it to consume. That night, the house plunged into an even deeper silence than before. It was absolute. There was no high-pitched ringing in my ears, no sound of my own breath or even my frantic heartbeat. I was utterly soundless, existing in a vacuum. My room was plunged into total, consuming blackness that devoured all light. My flashlight and phone, always within reach, were gone. Every object that could possibly make light or sound had been systematically removed from the room, their absence a palpable, suffocating weight. I reached out, my hand searching frantically for anything familiar, any anchor in the suffocating void. My fingers brushed against something cold, smooth, and strangely yielding on the nightstand. It wasn't an object I recognized. It felt like a slick, impossibly cold surface, organic yet alien, like cold, wet flesh. I recoiled, my heart screaming silently in my chest, a primal terror that found no outlet. Then a low, wet slurp, distinct and horrifying, echoed in the absolute soundlessness, seemingly inches from my ear, as if a vast, unseen mouth had just drawn something in. It was the unmistakable sound of something being consumed. I scrambled out of bed, hyperventilating silently, my muscles screaming in protest, but making no audible sound. My bare foot hit something soft and squishy on the floor, sickeningly warm and wet, like a recently consumed organ. I didn't dare look down. I just moved. Then, a sudden, blinding flash of pure, alien white light erupted from the corner of the room, followed by a guttural, wet gurgle, like water churning through a constricted throat, a sound that radiated an unnatural satisfaction. The light lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. For that brief, horrifying instant, I saw it, a figure. Tall, impossibly slender, almost formless, like a living void that drank the light around it, a jagged hole in reality itself. It was hunched over something on the floor, a pile of my clothes, now a sodden, dark mess, slowly deflating as if it had been drained of its very essence. From where its face should have been, a deeper blackness swirled, and a long, thin, translucent tentacle, dripping with dark fluid, slowly retracted from the soaked fabric. It was feeding. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I didn't even scream. My throat was sealed by the absence, my vocal cords frozen by the keeper's touch. I just ran. I crashed through the bedroom door, stumbling blindly through the silent, oppressive house, which now seemed to twist and stretch around me, its familiar rooms dissolving into an impossible labyrinth. Every frantic step was soundless, every ragged breath muffled. I burst out the front door into the cold, pre-dawn night. The silence outside was just as profound, but it felt different now, vast, alive, reaching, a living entity that stretched across the land. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned with silent agony, and I collapsed on the rough dirt road, miles from the farmhouse. I managed to crawl to a spot where my phone, miraculously, caught a single, blessed bar of signal, and I called for help, my voice a strangled croak, barely audible even to myself. I was found hours later, shivering violently, incoherent, and convinced the silence was still following me, riding the very air around me. I never went back to Blackwood Hollow. The farm was sold shortly after, sight unseen, to a mysterious holding company that appeared and disappeared like smoke. My family believes I had a nervous breakdown from isolation, a vivid hallucination. Maybe. But sometimes, in a perfectly quiet room, or when the power goes out, I can still feel that heavy, consuming presence, that suffocating silence pressing in. My ears will ring with an impossible absence of sound, and I'll taste that faint, cloying sweetness in the air. And I hear the faint, low hum resonating deep within my bones, a formless echo of the silent keeper, reminding me that some absences are more terrifying than any presence, and that some things once perceived can never truly be unheard. The fear isn't just a memory. It's a chilling, lingering echo, a subtle muffling of the world, in the profound silence that still sometimes, inevitably, finds me, whispering that one day it will finish what it started in Blackwood Hollow. But sometimes, in a perfectly quiet room, or when the power goes out, I can still feel that heavy, consuming presence, that suffocating silence pressing in. My ears will ring with an impossible absence of sound, and I'll taste that faint, cloying sweetness in the air. And I hear the faint, low hum resonating deep within my bones, a formless echo of the silent keeper, reminding me that some absences are more terrifying than any presence, and that some things once perceived can never truly be unheard. The fear isn't just a memory. It's a chilling, lingering echo, a subtle muffling of the world, in the profound silence that still sometimes, inevitably, finds me, whispering that one day it will finish what it started in Blackwood Hollow.